Welcome to the staff tier list. In this tier list, we're going to be going over True Zenoiran staffs and how they're good in PvE. So some of these are not multi-class. The generic ones are, certain ones are like Shaman only, Wizard Witch only, Cleric, Owl, and Scarlet only. So I'm going to be factoring that in as well. So to begin, we have the bronze staff. So just like with all bronze weapons, you want to immediately get off of it. There are always better options, and there is no reason to stay on this thing for longer than you need to be. And the same is true of the recruit staff. Similarly, it's a little bit better than the bronze, but it's not that much better. It gives you a little bit of HP, some XP gain. The XP gain is largely negligible. You level up pretty quickly in this game, and there's a ton of missions, so it doesn't really matter unless you're doing some kind of limited run. Baroque Rod, kind of similar. I would say it's not really that good. There are better staffs you get early, so this thing just gets replaced with those. The accuracy can be nice, though. And then we have the Iron Staff. I think this is still pretty bad. It's not much better than Baroque. It's pretty similar. It just has 50 magic attack, no other attributes. Black Iron, I will put that in C just because it gives you a little bit of crits, and the magic attack is respectable enough that you could stay on this for a little bit longer. And then of course we have the Carnet. This is definitely better than Black Iron. You have almost like you're approaching max, you're at like 19 out of 25 attack, and you get initiative +2, so this is pretty decent value. It's a good stepping stone. Then we have Great Wood Staff. This on the caster classes, it doesn't really matter. They don't really have physical attacks, so it kind of is just dumb. Now it still has 16 magic attack and 3 magic defense, which is fine, but I still think it's bad. It's like high D tier. Alright, then we have the Steel Staff. This is just a stat stick. It just has 22 magic attack, no other attributes. I would say it's a little bit worse than Carnet because 2 initiative is way more valuable than 3 more attack in this game. Alright, then we have Spell Steal. So similar to the other weapon, there's not really hybrid magical attacks, at least that I'm aware of on casters, because Witch and Wizard don't have them. Maybe some of the post-game characters do, but if you're using post-game characters, there's probably better things in this anyways. So it's kind of just like a weird weapon that probably doesn't need to exist. Alright, then we have Vorpal. Now Vorpal, I would say, is your first B tier. It has near max damage, initiative +3. That just those 2 things are good enough to justify running it until you get something better, but it's still quite good. And then of course we have Dragon Bone Staff. Now this I don't mind as much. I'm gonna actually put this in A tier because there are a lot of passive point things, like a lot of passive point skills that like tome conferrals, supportive skills, cleanses, things like this, that when you throw this on most casters, it doesn't matter that they lose initiative, because the main thing they're trying to do is support offense anyways, so getting a passive point early and losing initiative matters much less on most casting classes versus the other classes that go for board nukes. Alright, so Thorn Staff, I do think this is bad. I'll put this in like low C tier. It's still passive point +1, but you lose 15 HP on the frailest classes in the game outside of Shaman, who has more health than the clerics and the like witches and wizards, but beyond that, it's just too big of a downside to justify running this. There's better options for passive point +1. You're gonna die to spam more, and it's just not that good. Alright, Wing Crest, or actually let's do Icefall. Icefall, I would say, is also similar to this. It's a little bit better stats. You just lose guard rate, which is something you don't have anyways on these caster classes, so it truly doesn't matter if you lose guard rate. It's basically just passive point +1, magic attack 19. And then of course, Wing Crest, I would say is similar, just like a natural upgrade to this, depending on if you want crits or not. Now crits can affect healing. They can't affect things like Shaman, so this is a good Shaman staff if you just want passive point +1 with no downside, because Shaman doesn't attack, so it doesn't have crits. Its curses also cannot crit, so it's basically great for Shamans, good for some utilities. Then we have Templar Staff. So this I don't recommend unlocking. It's probably like high D tier. Guard rate and physical defense barely matter on these classes. 15 magical attack. It's slightly better than an iron. It's not really worth it. It's kind of just a waste of your resources. Phantom Night Staff. So this one's actually quite interesting. Everyone can use this. Grants a row of allies the ability to evade a single attack. So literally all the classes, including like Shaman, can run this. It's actually pretty decent value for utility. I'm gonna put it in B tier. It's serviceable. It's a row evade, which could save allies from getting, you know, row attacked. Preemptively, obviously. You have to cast this before. It's not a reactive ability. But it's still pretty decent. The stats on it don't matter. The ability is why I think it's B. And then we have Zenoiran Staff. So it improves bulk while giving magic attack. I would say it's like low C tier. Decent. And then we have the upgraded version of that. Bulk is nice on these classes, but typically you want utility, so I'm going to put this like high C tier. Same thing for Meteorite Rod, plus 20 HP, plus 10% guard rate. I'll put this in B because it's near max damage, but there's definitely better things to run, for sure. Alright, Thawing Scepter. Only usable by offensive casters, so no clerics, no shamans, things like this. So just like witches, wizards, and Alicina, or whatever her name is. Activates after enemy guards an attack. Attack a single enemy with magic for 100 magic potency. Ignores 30% of their defense. So this actually can be quite good. And you can run this... I don't know if you should be running this endgame. I would say this is like low B tier. It's really strong. You can get it quite early too. I think you can get it from the witch's town, like the swamp. So I think you get this very early. Like early and middle game, this is really where this would shine, and then you would probably replace it with something else. But it's still pretty valuable. It can help you get through blockers pretty easily, especially because it's reactive to blocking. So it pretty much either kills or almost kills whoever's blocking. Then we have Pestilence Staff, Poison Burst. Activates at end of battle, attacks a single enemy with magic, hits all enemies if target is poisoned. Now, usually you want to kill enemies, so hitting all enemies at the end of battle isn't the best plan, but 100 magic potency to all enemies if a single one of them is poisoned is a pretty easy condition to meet. Now, getting this thing, pretty sure this is not very like early game, like more middle end game. But I'll put it in like middle of C tier. It doesn't seem like it's super valuable. If you're using anything middle to end game, you have board nukes, and those are just better than this. Blood Moon Rod, Sanguine Darts. Attack a column of enemies, so you get a column attack, and you get a heal, and it also has decent stats. I'll say this is like here. The reason why is casting classes have very low max HP, so typically they either die to assists or they don't, or they die to a single hit, or they don't. So they're very infrequently at lower HP. They're either alive or dead. They're either alive at full health or dead. Very rarely, they don't have enough health to really move on it. Things usually just kill them. Like if you get hit with an arrow rain, you're probably dying. Like your casters almost are guaranteed to die to arrow rain, and like dragoon dives and enemy wild rushes and things like this. So healing on this class is not that good. Or on these classes is not that good, but column attack for 100 potency that heals, maybe it's situationally useful. 18 magic attack is respectable. It's not the best, but it's decent. Wind Scepter, evasion 20, I already like that. Skyward Thrust, attack 3 enemies for 75 potency, plus 50 versus flying. This actually is a pretty good weapon. I'm going to put this in high B, maybe beneath Vorpal. Evasion 20 is very valuable. Just for stats, it's good. Skyward Thrust is decent. There's definitely stronger things, though. That's why I'm being, a little cautious, is the where I put it. Telluric Staff, 19 magic attack. This is a board attack that is ground-based, so flyers are unaffected. Attack all enemies and stuns them. Honestly, I think this deserves low A tier. I think it's decent. Now, it can be inconsistent because of hit rates, enemies evading you, like thieves and stuff, and also the fact that it doesn't affect flyers. But stun, board nuke, even if it only hits half the things, or 3 or 4 out of 5 of the things, it's still pretty big value because it's instant, there's no charge. It's just an immediate attack. Situationally, this is very good, and it also stuns. So if you hit an enemy group of like 5 on the ground with this weapon, you can deal huge damage and stun them, so it's pretty valuable. Alright, and then we have Grand Maggot Staff. So, stats-wise, it's okay. Activates after an enemy attacks with an active skill. Counterattack all enemies with magic. This is actually very interesting. You could make some kind of like evasion tank, counterattack mage. Now you'd be relying on enemies to attack, but it is a board counterattack. It kind of has potential. I'm gonna put this in low A tier, assuming you run counter earrings and run like evasion tanking, or maybe you give this unit evade or something. You also could blind enemies so that when they attack you, they miss. That's also a combo you could do. So there's some potential there, but it's not clear that it would convert cleanly. Freeze immunity near max damage, 10 evasion, blizzard, it's a board attack for 150 potency that freezes. This is decent. I would say this is like high A tier. The freeze staff. It's a board nuke that freezes that could kill. It's not bad. It also gives you evasion too, which is nice since near max damage. Alright, quartz rod, gravity. So I have tested this. If you use it twice, it just halves whatever their current HP is. So if you use it, it's a board attack that halves enemies' HP. It's only usable by offensive mages. So if they're at 100 HP, it puts them to 50. If they're at 50, it puts them to 25. If they're at 25, it puts them to 12 or 13 based on how it rounds. So it just halves whatever their HP is. So if you cast this once, it's a board nuke that automatically puts all enemies at 50%, assuming it hits, because they can still dodge its hit rate. But it's decent. It's solid. There's definitely better options. I'll put this in like high B tier, just because I've tested it and tried to get as much out of it as possible, and there's not much to get out. Defender's Mace, base passive point +1, quick barrier. This is only usable by supportive casters like clerics, owls, stuff like this. Priestess. So reduce damage taken by one ally by 50% for one attack. I'm gonna put this in middle of C tier, and you'll see why in like a minute. All right, and then we have the Cleric's Cane, which is the same thing but better. I'm gonna put this in middle of A tier. So what does Cleric's Cane do? Reduce damage taken by a row of allies for the exact same cost by 50%, and it also gives you a passive point. So this is a row damage reduction, which is pretty good. It completely counters big row attacks, unless they crit and somehow get through still, like damage-wise, but it halves the damage for the most part. I mean, it literally halves the damage, so. Alright, Lyrical Wand. Base AP +1, active heal. Grants the user, or grants the target +1 AP. Restore moderate HP to ally. I kind of want to put this in S. But I don't think it's that good. Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe it is. Is it really S tier? I think it's high A tier. It's at least high A tier. I don't want to put it in S because it doesn't like break the game. It's just really good. Because usually what happens is you active heal. Like, you can't really active heal combo pieces because the cleric tends to go last or near last if you're running good classes. So you end up with a situation where you kill most, if not all, of the enemies, and then you can just active heal and usually have extra active points, but it's still early active point +1. That also batteries an early and middle game, which is valuable. So it's really good for when you use it, and then eventually you do replace it with something better. But it's like S tier in the early game, and then it like falls off to like B/C tier throughout the entire run. So we'll just say for like early and middle game, it's like S tier, and then like overall it's like A tier. You could still run it late game, and there are still combos you could use with this. You could initiative fix your healers to get, you know, these off, do stuff like that, but it's pretty valuable. Alright, Hallowed Maze. Heal +10% when using active skill, max HP, re-heal, activates at start of battle, grants a row of allies HP regen. HP regen heals you every time you take an action before that action. I think it's by 20. So it's decent. It's a start of battle. I don't think it's the best thing. I'll put it in low C tier. Staff of Succor, double heal, restore minor HP to 2 allies. It's fine. It's C tier. It's nothing too crazy. Ring Staff. I like the initiative. Initiative +5. Circle heal, it's a charge. Restore major HP to all allies, or remove all of target's debuffs. So this is kind of difficult to pull off. You could just use this after you've killed enemies to just heal everyone for a huge amount of HP. I'll put this in like high C tier. I don't think it's super useful. Maybe low B for just like spam healing at the end of battle. I don't think, well actually let me rephrase this. The initiative is great. The ability itself, I would only use at the end of battle. But you could still have it do other things. It still has near max damage and initiative +5. So just for those reasons, I think it deserves maybe like here. Okay. Phosphorescent Staff. So this one's very similar. Except this, if you were to like impetus this or something, you gain the ability to survive 1 lethal blow. It's very similar to the other one. The big heal. The debuff almost doesn't matter. I would say they're kind of similar. Alright, and then we have Precious Rod, limited heal, restore minor HP to all allies above their limits. Potency increases with fewer allies. I can heal up to 150% above max. So this is basically just like a quick like AoE heal that heals all allies. I would say this is like similar to these. All the golden things are kind of similar. Alright, Lifeblood, max HP, +10, res, revive 1 ally. This is a decent utility for if your team, let me zoom out. If your team has like a unit that typically dies to like range assist and magic assist, or you just happen to lose a unit, you can just switch this on just to get that unit back in the next battle, assuming the next battle is safe and favorable. So it just allows you to res without wasting items or valor points, so pretty decent. Purifier, Sacred Cure. It activates after allies debuffed. Remove all debuffs from a row. Grants targets immunity to 1 debuff. This is actually quite good. I'll put this in B tier. It's just a good utility for cleansing debuffs and also removing debuffs. Alright, and then we have the Liberators, Dispel All. This is a PvP thing. I'm going to put this in bad. Remove all buffs from all enemies. Maybe low C tier. There's maybe a few situations where this is usable, but generally you do not need to dispel enemies. And there are other ways to remove buffs. There's like pursuits that remove buffs and stuff, so literally any attacker can remove buffs. It's not an issue. Then we have Speed Hex Staff. Activates at start of battle. Inflicts a nit -30 on a single enemy. PvP, maybe. Not really. There's better effects. PvE, I don't really see it. I don't see it being super valuable. Shaman can already... I actually think this is bad. Shaman can already do the similar thing. So like the class that would be using this would be Shaman. It already can reduce like entire enemy initiative at the start of battle, so it's just redundant and there's no reason to run it. Flame Hex and Poison Hex. We'll do these at the same time. So this one, row of Poison, row of Burn. So the Burn is better early, the Poison is better later, because enemies take more damage from Poison as it scales off of max HP. These are Shaman unique weapons. There are combos off of Burn and Poison that can be decent. I'm gonna say these are like... I think they're actually B tier. They're kind of nice because they give Shaman the ability to deal damage. So if your Shaman team is shy a little bit of damage, maybe you're in like some difficult matchup, you have like a boss fight on your hands, after your Shaman debuffs, or maybe even before, you can just hit things with some Poison or Burn. And there are things that combo off of Poison and Burn, so it actually allows your Shaman to be like an offensive combo piece. Now Shaman can always, of course, just debuff the row of enemies with like physical magical defense -50% with defensive curse, which could make these redundant, but I found that in certain matchups they're pretty good. You don't run them all the time, but you switch them when they're needed, and they're pretty strong. And then, of course, we have the Dustbound Staff. This thing, I think, is A tier, like high A tier. It just puts blind on all enemies, which is actually pretty good, it turns out. It's, you know, if you need it, if you don't want the debuff, if you want to hurt their ability to deal damage to you if they act before you, this just allows you, especially if your Shaman is fast, to just completely waste an entire group of enemies' turns, assuming they don't cleanse it. Now, if they cleanse it, obviously it's not as good, but if anything gets cleansed, you know, it kind of counters Shaman, so it's pretty good. I would say it's like high A for utility. Alright, Shaman's Bone Staff. This is the Shaman attack. This is the only way, I think, that Shaman has access to an attack that does potency. It has access to like debuffs and burn and stuff, but attack a single enemy. The description, I think, is bugged. It says 50 potency and ignores plus 100 defense versus debuff targets. I think it's supposed to say plus 50 potency and ignores 100 defense, or maybe the numbers need to be flipped. I'm pretty sure the description is bugged. Someone was telling me that on stream. a little bit ago. But this is interesting because very often Shaman just does debuffs and then it has like nothing else to do after its big debuffs are off. So you could use this just to like super poke something. Well, not really super poke. Well, actually no. If assuming that these are flipped or it does bonus damage and ignores defense, this could like last hit. I'll put it in low. Let's do like low B, high C. Let's do high C tier. It could be useful for like last hitting. It's not as useful as like row poison, which actually can be big damage, or row burn. You can stack burn too, so that actually can amount to a ton of damage. But it could be decent. All right, Gleaming Mace, Holy Smite. So someone was asking about, can clerics attack? They can. This is it. Cleric Strike. I'll put it here because it's a 200 potency buff remover that allows your healer, if it has nothing better to do and you don't need healing, to just smack something for big damage. 200 potency is a lot. That's significant damage. Cleanse or stripping buffs as well. That's decent utility to switch to for if you want your cleric to smack something. I think you get this in Angel Lands, by the way. Pertian, dude, these names. Perteran staff. Perteran staff. Initiative +3, evasion +5, early game access. I think this is like here. I like the initiative and the evasion, mostly the initiative. Initiative +3 is good. If any one of these has a net +3, move it lower than them. I don't have all the stats memorized. I do know that, you know, I optimize based on what I have. So if it's, let's put it low B. I guess that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair because this is +3. And this is just an early +3. You get it from the witch. Very useful. Red Bark, or no, I'm sorry. Mother Layla's staff. Parting res, base passive point +1. Parting res is actually really good because if someone dies for 1 passive point, you get to res them at the end of battle. And very often something will die to some stray attack. Maybe you have a bad matchup. Like anything can go wrong. So this I think is like low B tier because it's just, actually it's a little bit, where's the other res? The other res, I think was one of these. We'll put it like high B, or like mid B. It's really good because it's passive point +1. Magic attack is fine. You don't really need super high magic attack on these healers. And then of course revive 1 ally, restoring them to 1 HP is really good at the end of battle. It's also not limited. They're like, you can have a bunch of end of battle effects. So typically your healer will have a passive point. Anyways, Red Bark, passive seal immunity. It's kind of more endgame. I can see the use case, but C tier. It's not really super useful. Better things for sure. Seeker, I'm sorry. Fluorotic, Fire Burst. Activates at end of battle, attack a single enemy with magic, hits all enemies if target is burning. I would say this is like a stepping stone mid-C. It's something you can run, but end of battle does not matter late game, and you'll see why, like with all these board nukes. But yeah, I don't think it's that good. Seeker, Magic Shell, activates at start of battle, completely negates up to 3 hits. I could see this being useful to countering fast enemies. I'll put it in like low B tier. There's definitely better things. There's definitely better at the start of battle effects, but it's decent. Respectable. Libera, Reincarnation. Revive 1 ally, restoring them to 1. Grants immunity to HP, or immunity to damage for 1 attack. This thing, I think, probably like here. There's like, normal res is fine. At the end of battle, res I would say is best. This allows them to kind of get back into the fight and allows them to tank a hit so that when you revive them, they can at least survive another hit, so then maybe they can catch a heal and come back into the fight. So you could argue it's better for that reason. Personally, I don't find that to ever be an issue. Things that die tend to be utilities that help your team kill rather than kill, so at least in my experience. Millennium Scepter, here's our first S tier. Near max damage, early access, Trinity Rain, attack all enemies for 300 potency. You impetus this, it does a ton of damage. It can get flipped. It has 2, technically 3 hard counters. It can get flipped with Angel or Feather Shield, but you can just simply drain, use a Shaman to passive curse or just drain the row of Angels. They always have 2 passive points, so you can just drain them, then it can't get flipped, so that it completely removes that obstacle. Blind can counter it, which can counter everything, so you just wear anti-blind gear. So that gets rid of that issue. And then Nope Owl will dispel you. Someone said that the Pure Field on the Elven Archer prevents Dispel from working. I haven't tested that, but if that's the case, that prevents Impetus from being interrupted, because Impetus can be dispelled through the owls. So there's at least 2 of the 3 hard counters removed. If the Dispel thing still hits, then it still hits. That counters all Impetus builds in theory, but if that Pure Field thing does work, then... I mean, either way, like this, in most matchups, this kills whatever. If this goes off, it kills things, even without crits in most cases. So it's just a ton of damage. It's pretty good. What else? Cardinal's Mace, Holy Cradle, grants a row of allies the ability to withstand 1 lethal blow, and it's near max. I don't know. I find that once combat starts, like the only thing that really kills my units are like enemy valor skills and range and magic assists. That's really all that kills me. Maybe like a catapult if I'm not paying attention. I'm gonna put this like mid-C. I don't think this is very valuable. All right, King Staff, Albior. All stats +5, magic attack 25. I would say this is S tier. It's an all stats max weapon. It's, even if you're just using this to a nit fix and give some other stats, it's just really good. It gives evasion and initiative and damage, and scales healing, it scales damage. You could even run it on Shaman just to give it more defensive stats like HP, evasion. It gets a little bit of guard right now. It gets more initiative. It's good on literally everything. There's not, like, every class benefits from using that. Euro Staff, so just like with all these, this tends to be, these are always an S tier. Net, evasion, AP, max damage, can't go wrong. And then this thing, HP recovery, it's also S. So max damage, passive point +1, HP recovery. HP recovery matters the least, but max damage, passive point +1 is low S by default. Then we have the Sacral Rod, Affliction Immunity, heal +20% active skill. I would say this is, I just clicked on the wrong thing. This is a little bit better or worse than all stats. Affliction Immunity. I would say it's like a little bit, it's about the same, honestly. You could say they're tied. It's kind of hard to say. There's situations where one is slightly better than the other, but you get a little bit of healing when using active, and you get immunity to all afflictions. So this is just really useful for, you know, attacking through blind, because it just makes it do nothing, preventing shutdown conditions like stun and freeze, getting rid of like things like poison, preventing burn. So this is a more defensive attacking option, but it's still pretty aggressive when you use it. It also chip heals you, which is very nice. Papal Crossier. This is really good. It's only usable by healers, but it's very strong. I would say it's a little bit better than these, a little bit worse than this, because this gives initiative and active points. Passive point I don't think is as valuable. I think active point is better, but initiative and active points and then board nuke I think are a little bit better, but it's very strong. And then for the last one, I'll put this in low S. This is AP +1, 21 magic attack. It doesn't have as many effects as these. This is the Zenoiran, Carnelian staff. So pretty good. I don't have it on this playthrough, so I'll just tell you what it does. 21 magic attack, +1 AP. It's a little bit worse than the rest tiers, but you could argue it's A, but I think it's like A or S. Just because it allows you to do more things and is pretty easy to get. You can get it as early as the Colosseum, so you can have it for most of the game. But that is it for staffs. Definitely like and subscribe for more content. Peace.